Hi, this is Olga, People of Substance by LemonSkies, and I am thrilled to invite back my guest, Peter. Hi, say hello, Peter.
Hello.
So let me give a quick overview about your background, but before I do that, last time we did this interview, I literally was snorting water out of my nose because you were making me giggle. So the bar is high. Um, but Peter's background, I've known you forever. We worked together at one point. And you wear many hats, so it's kind of hard to just peg you as one. You're a professor at GW University. You are a public affairs and political communications consultant. You're a writer. You're a podcaster. And you also talk a lot about ethics and political communications, which seems like a very timely and very prolific topic, at least these days. Anything else I left out?
Let's see. I'm a senior fellow at a think tank in Bilbao in the Basque Country in Spain.
I think you're doing that just so you can keep traveling to Spain.
Largely, yes.
Yes.
Yes. It's an amazing, and it's actually not to Spain, but to the Basque Country.
Mm-hmm.
Given the people I hang out with, that's an important distinction. But yeah, I mean, I think it's culturally and historically really interesting as a politics guy. I find it fascinating. It's beautiful, and the food is unreal. So a lot of good reasons to keep going back.
We'll talk about that. So we'll sidebar how I get a gig where it brings me somewhere in the vicinity of good food and nice beaches.
Yeah, it's part of the one of the great appeals of academia is finding people in some place you really want to spend time in and convincing them they can't live without your wit and wisdom. And if it works, it's really it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Peter, one of the first questions I wanted to ask you, and you and I have talked about many topics over the years, but just, I know as a professor, it's a little bit different type of job description, but how do you juggle all the multiple projects and sort of, aside from food and traveling to the Basque Country, what is driving you? And what's actually hard about that?
I've been thinking about that. And part of the answer is I don't know. It doesn't occur to me that I'm doing a lot because I just do stuff. Part of it is I'm pretty lazy. I'm basically pretty lazy, but I also have a really short attention span. And I feel like the tension between the two means I've constantly got to be doing something something new. I'm lucky that, I just do a bunch of stuff and enough of it turns into money that, I can live reasonably well, which is incredibly lucky. I think part of it actually is my lovely young wife, Zoe, and I lead a relatively simple life. We don't have kids. We have a niece and a nephew who live, 20 minutes away. So we get to sort of wind them up, overexcite them. And then when they start screaming or behaving badly, send them home. But that's, you invest a lot of time and energy, physical and emotional energy into your kids. And so it's, there's that. I don't know. I just do stuff and I don't know. It's a terrible, terrible answer, but it's kind of what I got.
I mean, it sounds like you're living your best life. So, I mean, I envy you in the best possible way.
I am incredibly, incredibly lucky. And I really and it's not like hey, and I'm buzzing along and it's all fine. I mean, there are times when it's an absolute grind, right? I'm the associate director of the School of Media and Public Affairs at GW, which is great. But one of the things I do is hire and manage adjuncts and take a first pass at scheduling. Mm-hmm. And we've got really, really smart full-time faculty, a woman named Professor Rebecca Trumbull. Foreign governments call her for advice on what to do about social media. Our adjunct faculty include a couple of Pulitzer Prize winners, NPR hosts, New York Times writers. And it's really lucky that I get to work with and talk to these folks, but you're sort of emailing back and forth going, hey, what do you, so it's some of it's a grind and some of it's just saying, okay, got to grind through. But on balance, it's really fun. And I think that's, I don't know. Yeah. I kind of get through the grind so I can get to the fun.
Yeah. So, one of the things you and I have both been in consulting world quite a bit. And I was thinking about your career in academia. What's the same and what's different about being a consultant and being a teacher?
That's an interesting question. I was an adjunct professor for a long, long time at GW, including when we worked together at M&R. And, once a week you show up and that's almost the perfect gig because you're expected to say, well, here's what happened in the real world and have this client conversation. And then you go home and you don't have the responsibility of teaching students classes they don't necessarily want to take, which is great. And so I was doing, 80, 90% politics and 10, 20% teaching. And now I'm teaching full time. I'm helping run the department, and I'm still doing some comms. I think that a couple of things that they have in common. One is you have to appear to be smarter than you actually are. A lot of teaching is actually appearing to be dumber than you are. You want to ask good questions. You want to make sure the students are leaning in. And even if you think you know the answer, they'll surprise you if you don't, just assert that you're right all the time. As opposed to a consultant, you have to appear to be the smartest guy in the room because they're paying you a lot of money to be the smartest guy in the room. So there's a lot of that. One of the things I find really works really well, though, is in teaching, you're constantly going over the basics and you're checking your assumptions, right? And when you're consulting, it's easy to think, well, I do this thing last, and to kind of get on autopilot. Oh, I do this thing, I do this thing, I do this thing. Then you lose the basics. You're not keeping up with any research. You're not keeping up with the best practices in the field. So teaching actually forces me to do that. And seeing what my students are learning and not learning reinforces what I'm doing consulting. Hey, this is working. Have you thought about that? The other piece is I will bring client problems to the classroom, not naming the clients, but I'll say, have faced this thing. Okay, hypothetically, what would one do if? Sometimes it'll turn up as exam questions. Actually, in one case, there's a final exam question. What would I do about this? The students give me great input that I would then pass along to the client. I would get paid and give the students none of the credit, which was kind of a perfect system for me because I get paid by both people. It actually worked quite well.
No, I think it's brilliant. I think something like that was it Legally Blonde, where the case was in front of students. What's the best defense?
Yeah.
You launched your podcast about a year ago, and I think you're about 20 episodes in, if I'm not mistaken. So can you talk about the year in podcasting? And you're laughing, so I can't wait. What's ahead?
It's absurd. It's absurd. College professors get paid to tell 20-year-olds how smart they are. And if the students are at all clever, they agree that the professor is very smart because they feel like the grade hinges on that. It just feeds your ego in all sorts of bad ways. And there's this fellow professor named Dave Karp, really smart guy, really funny. And he and I, people would come by my office and say, hey, we're going to Professor Karp's office for office hours. You should come. And then I would show up and the two of us would make fun of each other and the students would laugh and we'd all get paid, which again, sweet gig. And so Dave and I do this every other week. I think you know this, you've been doing this longer than I have. It's not easy, but it keeps us both a bit focused, right? The hook for the podcast is strategic communications, hot takes with footnotes. So we offer our hot takes on what's happening with whatever. But we try to support our claims with political science research, social science research, polling data. So it's not just what occurred to me last, which is what way too much of punditry is, or, hey, I've been right all along, I've got a shtick. We really try to back it up with, recent research in the American Political Science Review or, surveys from Pew Research. And then we post those online so that anybody who wants to check the work can go in. And again, it keeps us both focused and thinking and what's going on in the news, and it makes us better teachers because we kind of practice on each other. It's really, and we have a huge amount of fun.
I totally relate to that because, last week I spoke to somebody about social media, and that kind of forced me down the rabbit hole of, let me explore all the audio social media that's emerging and what are some trends. So, I do social media, obviously, but it's not focus of what I do. So it's just always great to expand and, kind of have something that prompts you to learn something new.
And it helps us. We basically practice in the podcast on our students and practice on the students in our podcast. You kind of work out a routine as you go. At the heyday of comedy, you start in tiny little clubs, you do open mic night, then you do, the first comics night, and you go and you finally work your way up. Dave and I kind of do that. The other thing it does, it's kind of a habit from the podcast, but also in general, is when I talk to the press and when I talk to my students and on the podcast, I try to defend my claims with research, right? So I'm in the press not infrequently. And for example, I talked to U.S. News and World Report a week or so ago about bipartisanship. And, can Biden go bipartisan and blah, 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 blah. And I've got my hot takes, right? I've been around for a while, but I immediately went to the social science research and looked at analysis of how often are people bipartisan, how often are they not, to what end, what are the actual electoral outcomes. Then I went to 538's listing of how often every member of the House and Senate votes with the president.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how much of bipartisanship is and conservative and a straight shooter or whatever is posturing, and how much of it actually turns up in voting patterns. Help me, give better answers. And I then got that material to the journalist. Hey, here's my supporting material. So hopefully the journalist then writes a better story, and hopefully then asks the next interviewee, how do you know?
You're like a one-person ecosystem.
A one-person I am lily pad and frog. I am decay and birth. Yes.
Yes, you're all of the above. I mean, you're sort of like, you're in the media and you're in the podcast producing the media, and you're teaching impressionable young minds, and you're informing the stories. So I truly love that.
But actually, it helps a lot, right? So I teach this course on ethics and political communication at GW because, again, it should probably be a thing. And a question is, if you're a consultant, you and I did this, right?
Yes.
You're brought in, hey, help us do A. You know about A. And the answer is, of course, I know about A. There's $10,000 a month attached to it. And you go home and you learn as fast as you can. Right? You don't know about A, right? You figure it out. Same thing happens in the press. Reporter calls, do you know about X? Of course I know about X. Learn about X, learn about X. And I raised with the students, hey, I just gave this interview, and it was with PBS, the digital side, not the TV side, about Biden's new chief of staff. And I have some ideas. I was the chief of staff in the House, and I got smart about science fast. And I gave this interview, and then I went to class and said, hey, so I just gave this interview. I've never been a White House chief of staff. I don't know the outgoing chief of staff, Ron Klain. We have a lot of people in common. I don't know him. And I don't know science. Again, we have people in common. I don't know. Should I have given the interview? And the students had good feedback, right? And as a result, I got a couple of other press calls in the past few days that I'm just not the guy to talk to it about. They're better experts like Dave Karp and Professor Trumbull. And I took a pass because my students kept me honest, right? The instinct is, of course, I would like to be in the media. I am so smart. Listen to me talk. But the students kept me honest. Said, actually, you know what? You don't have to answer every question that's been asked. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to.
That's true. Well, and I think it's sort of like being able to let somebody else have the spotlight,
and intentionally giving it to people, right? One of the questions from a media outlet that will remain unnamed, but you've heard of it, was how's Biden's messaging on anti-Asian hate crimes? As he's speaking to the Asian community in the wake of the racism against the Asian American community goes back to the Chinese Exclusion Acts, and obviously the brutal violence recently, Japanese internment and all that. And, I could probably get smart enough to give some general comms thoughts, but you know what? I'm a middle-aged white guy who doesn't study race or racism. Maybe don't ask me. Maybe find somebody who's in the Asian American community. Like there are scholars in the Asian American community who are, who study politics or political science or persuasion or rhetoric. Don't ask me. Find somebody from that community to say what's working, what's not.
I so respect what you just said, because, when in social media and in conversations, when, we talk about some of the women's issues and some of the feminist views, et cetera, sometimes you just want to say to the guy, if you're speaking to a guy, like, maybe you want to sit this one out.
Yeah, absolutely. I was asked during the 2020, I think it's 2020 election, maybe 2022. Must have been 2020. What does Biden need to do to get the young black male vote? What? Again, middle-aged white guy. I have no idea. Second, it's not like there's one community where like every African-American male between like 18 and 34 gets on a conference call every morning and says, so how are we feeling about, like, it's, I don't, what? No, don't ask me. Go find, come on, don't.
And it should be obvious, but I don't know if people just, can't stand to not get the spotlight, or, I don't know what it is, but it's sort of like, you don't have to have an opinion about everything.
Yeah. There's actually the cover of Time magazine, being quiet. And I don't know, I've seen the online pictures, and somebody actually name checked me on a LinkedIn post about it, but I haven't actually read the article. But from what I understand, it's, listen more than you talk.
Yeah.
I think one of my frustrations with social media is everybody feels as if they have to have an opinion. You really, it's okay to say, I don't know and I don't care.
Right. So, you started touching on ethics, and, that's been, I mean, I feel like that's been a very tumultuous area. So, as we're entering 2023, what are some topics you think we should be paying attention to? What are some trends you're seeing? Are we more ethical? Are there massive issues you're seeing? I mean, you're never going to run out of material here, clearly. So,
No, it's a bit of a question. It's a bit of a setup. Before we get into 2023, it's worth noting that American politics has always been a hot mess.
Mhm.
In the race between Adams and Jefferson for president, the then president of Yale, a guy named Reverend Timothy Dwight, said that if Thomas Jefferson were elected president, our wives and daughters would be subject to legal prostitution.
Mhm.
Adams made up stuff about Jefferson and planted it in the press. Jefferson did not stoop to respond. He paid someone to respond for him. I mean, it's just been terrible. But yeah, 2023, it is answering the question: can American politics get any weirder? Yes, in fact,
You
it
think?
can. Thank you, George Santos. He stole money from a dying dog.
Wait, I didn't hear that one.
Oh, that was the GoFundMe to raise money for care for a veteran's
There was no dog.
dog. No, there was a dog. There was a veteran. The dog was really sick and dying. Santos just kept all the money, apparently.
I just can't.
One question that my students have been asking, I've been getting from the press, is, Santos is a member of the House of Representatives. Speaker McCarthy had this opportunity to say, no, thank you, even I have limits. But he didn't. He said, look, I need your vote. Sure, come on in, sit on a committee. We'll treat you as if you're actually a functional grown-up. And what do you do in the face of that, right? If people like George Santos don't get punished, why should anybody be good?
Right.
What are the incentives? Which is a legit question. And my answer is, you should be good because you should be good,
Mhm.
right? I don't litter, not because I'm going to get caught, right? The litter police in DC they just aren't there, right?
Right.
I don't litter because you don't litter. It just, at some point, you've got to be willing to be good, because being good is the right thing to do. And enough people are. Hopefully more people are than aren't. And it's, Santos is the obvious. Like, just don't do whatever he's doing. Take notes and do the opposite. But most of us don't face those choices. Should I steal money from a dying dog? Yes or no? No. But most of the choices are when does spin become a lie, right? We've done this as consultants. You're framing in and you're framing out. What are you highlighting? What are you hiding? All that kind of stuff. And hopefully most people get it mostly right most of the time. And they do it because we believe that in a democratic community, we got to live together. And this is the kind of community I want to live in. So I'm going to behave that way. And hopefully it works. We've had the high profile examples recently where it hasn't. But it's also worth noting that Santos is in the news because he's an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
Right? 434 members of the House of Representatives did not steal money from a dying dog today. Film at 11.
Right.
It's not, look, there's nothing happening. Would you like to see more of this in a meme? There's just, it's not a thing. So instead you highlight that.
Well, and you're right. The memes and kind of the entertainment value is driving it, where some issues, they might be not very exciting, but they're serious issues and should be treated that way.
That's always been the case, but that's always been the case. Right? I mean, America, we've had the penny press, and it's not like the American people were virtuous, pure, living in a land of puppies, rainbows, and unicorns, and then suddenly Twitter, Donald Trump, and George Santos, and the wheels came off. We behave as if we're people, because it turns out we're people, and on balance, hopefully that's better than not, but not always. And sometimes it's like, wow, are you kidding me? Again, stealing money from a dying dog.
I'm gonna be Googling that for your footnotes.
Of all the awful things, he's wanted in Brazil, right? He loaned his campaign $500,000 and recently admitted that it wasn't actually his money, but he's not telling anybody whose money it is. Like, all of this. His parents were killed in the Holocaust when in fact they weren't. Members of his staff were murdered in a hate crime in Florida, and they weren't. All this stuff. The thing that sticks with me is, how do you steal money from a dying? Come on.
Well, and it's not that the guy is stretching the truth or framing or spinning. Like, he's so past spinning. I mean, he's just straight up.
This is line. He said, I graduated from Baruch College. He could have said, I attended, had he shown up for a couple of classes and dropped out. There are ways to kind of parse it. It's just making it up as he goes. And it's so distressing that the Speaker McCarthy hasn't pulled him aside and said, you know what, some things actually matter more than having my picture in the House of Representatives. And that's, you're not, frankly, soiling the reputation of Congress, which is like, you have to work hard to make congressional behavior look bad. And Santos, bless his heart, is doing just that.
I think you said bless his heart in like the Southern way here.
Bless his heart.
Yes.
I was in South Carolina for 2 years.
Uh-huh.
I did.
That's true. You did. So do you have any new projects that I haven't heard about that are in the works? Any new books? Any new podcasts? Are you making a documentary? Are you doing,
Now I feel both tired and stressed and like I'm failing because I'm not doing anything new. I don't think so. I'm heading over to Bilbao in March to participate in the 10th anniversary of a think tank over there, working with a grad student on what does it mean to be Basque. She's really interesting. Her name is Prapti. She's from Mumbai, and she's helping me on this project. And she asked, what's the South Asian community like in the Basque Country? So for your listeners who don't know, that's northern Spain, southern France, Bilbao, San Sebastian, Biarritz, so the famous cities. I don't know. So she checked it out. Turns out there are Pakistani communities in a couple of small Basque towns. And the obvious question is, like, why? Why would you? It's not Marseille, Madrid, Barcelona, big port cities that are diverse and robust. These are small towns. And then how do they integrate? How do they feel? Is it what do the Basques do with the Pakistanis? How do are they being accepted? All this kind of stuff, which I thought was a really super interesting question. And hopefully Prapti can come join me in this and talk about it. So the interesting new stuff I'm doing actually isn't mine at all. It's being done by other people I get to hang around with. Yeah,
I mean that's been working so far. So
that's a great part of being a consultant and a teacher, right? You get paid to be surrounded by smart people, and if you're any good at it, you listen to them.
Exactly. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up with something a little fun. You and I didn't do this last time.
A little fun.
And
not a medium fun, not a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, like I don't want to set wrong expectations here. But last time we didn't do this, and we've been playing a round of Two Truth and a Lie. Have you ever played that?
I think so. I Googled it just to make sure, because again, checking the thing.
Let me explain to you the rules.
Okay.
So basically, you make 3 statements, and 2 of them are truthful, and 1 is a fib. So like, attending college that Santa's would be really good at this game. So
3 truths or 3 lies and a spin. Is that the?
No, 2 truth and a lie.
I'm thinking the Santos way. I'm thinking like 2 truths seems like a lot of truths for George Santos.
That probably does. I mean, he probably has told 2 truths like in his lifetime.
I like your optimism.
Like in the lifetime, right? Like that, the bar is not high here. But you have to try and make it a little tricky. And then it's my job to tell you which one is truthful and which one is not.
So I have to tell you, since you warned me this was coming, I've been unreasonably obsessing about this. And, is this true? Is this true enough? And I again, according to the internet, you want to have the lie sound truthful, but some of the truths sound lieful. And how do you? And the object is all right. So
you really did your research here.
Well, no, I have put. Yeah, there are students I'm not getting back to. Essays I should be grading because that's actually true. And I apologize to my student. I will get you notes back.
You're busy
today. So 2 truths and a lie. 2 truths and a lie.
No pressure.
Okay. I was part of I was half of a doubles pool tournament winning team in Muncie, Indiana. I unsuccessfully auditioned for a game show, and I did lighting for a play in a New York theater festival.
So by the process of elimination, I feel like I can totally see you trying out for a game show. So I think that's truthful. And I know you're artistic, so I can see you doing lighting for a play or a show. I don't see why you'd go to Indiana. Like, why would you go to Indiana? No offense to, I don't know that many people there, so actually, I'm not sorry. So I think that's the lie.
Nope. I actually, so I did. A college classmate of mine named Michael Boothroyd, he's a good yuppie, but he's also in theater, and he produced a show at there's a theater festival in the Garment District in New York a long time ago. And I did TV, I did lighting and TV lighting in college, and Michael did TV production in college. So he called and said, can you come up and do the lighting for the show, which was great fun. So I did that. So that was true. Also after college, see, these are old. I feel bad.
That's okay. There's no expiration date on these.
After college, I think it was after college. At some point, a long time ago, I drove cross country, and I wound up visiting a friend who was a debate coach in Indiana, and it happened to be tournament night at his local pool hall. And he was good, and I wasn't as awful as I might have been, and there just weren't that many people there that night. So won a doubles pool tournament in Muncie, Indiana. And I would love to try for a game show. So if any of your listeners audition people for game shows, you know, I've got a background.
Yeah, I think you'd be good at it.
Thank you.
Or maybe like a reality show, Peter. I think a reality show.
No, I want one of the buzzer hitting. I tried at one point. I don't know if you remember Ben Stein, Bueller, the conservative economist. He was in, right? Okay. He had a game show called Win Ben Stein's Money. And I actually tried to get on that, and I got a call back saying, hey, can you come be in LA like in 2 days? And the answer was no, I've got a job. Can we make this like in 2 weeks? And they ghosted me. That's the closest I've come.
Okay. So I think maybe that's a goal. Yeah, getting on the show.
Great.
We just have to find something with like a degree. Like since you went and did research on Truth and Lie, I feel like we need like a little bit of intellectual level for a game show. It can't be something completely stupid.
Oh, I don't know. 80s pop culture references. Columbo. Is there like a game show just about Columbo?
There's a pub in my neighborhood that does quiz night. It's a true, and they do Premier League matches, so you should really.
And apparently, DC is like a trivia night center. Apparently, like whatever. I don't know. You get a bunch of
nerds.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of smart, competitive people who like to go drinking, which kind of defines DC. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, but well,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
It's always wonderful to see you. I enjoyed our time immensely. I'm proud to say that I have not snorted anything out of my nose, and I was avoiding drinking water during this interview.
I feel I've let you down. I don't know. I don't have recent stories. I've not been on a game show. No. I haven't made you hurt yourself. I feel like this whole half an hour, I feel like I've let you down.
Peter, thank you for coming as always, and please come back.
Anytime. Thanks very much for having me.